share with you the headlines of Christianity today around AD 60. This is what it said. Paul builds solid, godly relationships while wasting away in prison. Did you hear that? He builds solid, godly relationships while wasting away in prison. Paul had a vision. I don't know if you're able to pull up the PowerPoint. It's right at the bottom there, I believe. There you go, right there. Paul had a vision. He had a vision of what God wanted him to accomplish with his life. And that vision was to go to Rome. Now, Rome, it's understandable if Paul wanted to go to Rome, because you see, Rome was the seat of power, the seat of authority. And he wanted to go and he wanted to share the gospel with the people in Rome. Also, if you wanted the gospel message to spread, well, the old saying was that all roads lead to Rome, but also, therefore, all roads lead from Rome. So if you wanted the gospel to spread, you would share it in Rome, and it would go throughout the Roman Empire. So he had this vision. I want to go and I want to share about Jesus in Rome. He was excited, but there were many people who were quite afraid of doing this. Quite afraid that Paul would go and do this. Well, why would you be fearful of going to a lovely place like Rome? Think of all of the things that you could see in Rome. I was going through the list of places that they promote for people as we go and visit Rome. For one, there is the, what is it called, St. Peter's Square, which is part of the Vatican. Oh, but wait a minute, that wasn't available in Paul's day, was it? No, the Vatican wasn't there in Paul's day. How about this one here? I read about this one here. St. Peter's Basilica. Oh, I'm sorry, it wasn't on the list back when Paul went there. There's a few other places. The Pantheon. The Pantheon was sort of the seat of power, but it wasn't built until AD 100, so again, it wasn't on Paul's list. Oh, here's one that was there, and it was on the list back then, and it is the most highly recommended place to see in Rome. It's the Colosseum. Well, but wait a minute now. You might not, as a Christian, want to visit the Colosseum when Nero was the emperor of Rome. Why did he want to go to Rome? Well, he wanted to share the gospel. And so he ends up in Rome. And twice in Rome, he is put in prison. Now, the first time he's in prison, he's under house arrest. Don't get any ideas about what house arrest, based upon our modern day concept of house arrest. House arrest these days means you're in your home and they put a bracelet on your ankle which helps them to monitor wherever you are. So you're basically left on your own, but you have this ankle bracelet. No, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that in Paul's day. In Paul's day, you see, he was put under the responsibility of the Praetorian Guard. And the Praetorian Guard, well, I guess you could say it's similar to the French Foreign Legion. Either you were in the Praetorian Guard or you were probably locked up. You were that kind of a person. They were hard-nosed, they were a hard-cased group of people. And he was put underneath their responsibility while he awaited trial before Nero. So he's put under these people who are pretty, or can be pretty nasty. And he is chained to them. That's their monitoring system back 2,000 years ago. They wanted to keep track of where Paul was at all times, so he was chained to the guard. And literally he would wear a wrist bracelet. Now, you get the idea of a wrist bracelet. This was a chain bracelet. It was fitted tightly around your wrist, and then it had a chain going to the guard who was standing just a few feet away from you at all times, 24 hours a day. You had no privacy whatsoever. Everything you do, this guard had to follow. And the guards got to change, which was good for them because they worked on a rotational basis. But Paul was continuously chained to a Roman guard. So he's probably thinking to himself, well, I believe that God gave me this vision to go to Rome and to share with the Romans the gospel. Well, what am I doing here? Like this? This isn't what I expected. My wife tells this story, and I like this story, of a lonely man who went to a pet store and he wanted to buy a bird that could sing lovely and would cheer him up. And so he goes to the pet store owner and he asks for a songbird that would cheer him up. Oh, the pet store owner says, I've got just the bird for you. It's got a beautiful song. And when you come into the room, this bird's going to sing. It's going to cheer your heart. And he listens to the bird and, oh, this is lovely. The bird's got a beautiful song. I want this bird. This bird's going to cheer me up. Buys the bird and he brings it home. And every time he comes into the room, the bird breaks out in this beautiful song and it warms his heart. One day when he's going to feed the bird, he gets up close to the cage and he noticed that this beautiful songbird has only one leg. How dare he, that shopkeeper, sell him a one-legged bird? So he goes down and he's all upset and he reams out the shopkeeper for selling him a one-legged bird. And the shopkeeper looks at him with kind of amazement. You asked for a songbird. Now you want a bird that sings and dances? What do you expect? Now, perhaps Paul was very upset about all of this. And maybe he had a conversation with God, and maybe the conversation went like this. God, I thought you wanted me to share your son Jesus with the Romans. What am I supposed to do here with this soldier attached to me 24 hours a day, listening to every word that I say? And God graciously looks at Paul and says, do you want to share the gospel with as many people as possible? Do you want to share the gospel with believers and non-believers? Do you want to tell about the hope you have in me and about the love that I have for you with as many people as possible? What do you expect? You see, we need to start seeing problems from God's perspective. But again, I repeat, we can't do this on our own. We cannot do this in our own power. We need God's help. Philippians chapter 1 and verse 12. Paul stated, I want you to know, dear brothers and sisters, that everything that has happened to me has helped spread the good news. Did you hear that? Everything that has happened to me has helped to spread the good news. So Paul is taking this challenge, and with the help of God and the grace of God, he's turning it around for an opportunity. You know that old saying, when life hands you a lemon, make lemonade. We used to have an old Pinto. Remember the old Pintos? Yeah. It was an orange-colored Pinto. And I called it my little pumpkin. And I told people that after midnight it turns into a lemon. So if life hands you a lemon, see Ed. He'll fix it. Or I'll tell you to get rid of it. I don't know if you've noticed this lately. And maybe it's escaped, your attention. This world is a very negative place these days. Have you picked up on that slight, intonation towards negativity? Just slight. Now here's something that we need to remember, and that is, if we base the intake of information that we receive on a daily basis solely on media outlets, news media outlets. I'm just going to let you know that there's a possibility that you might receive a lot of negativity. Just a possibility. Now, I read the statistics. I don't always go for statistics, but this one here I believe is accurate. 91% of all the news that we receive through the various media outlets, TV, radio, newspaper, internet, gossip, 91% is negative. I tend to believe that one there. That means that if we start our day and we're feeling happy about the sunshine and happy about, just being alive and being in the presence of God, and then we spend the rest of our day listening to the media outlets, we're going to be miserable by the end of the day. You see, media outlets, like other stores, they're in the profession of selling a product. They sell a product. Their product is the news. And they're going to present whatever sells. And if negative news sells, then this is what they're going to give us. I remember this one reading I heard, this old media saying, if it bleeds, it leads. You get it? Yeah. The worst news is going to be the headline. One media outlet, it was a web-based media outlet, decided for one day, just one day, they would give and they would report only good news stories. Guess what happened? 66% of all of their readers left them. We're asking for, people are asking for negative news. Here's another one here. More people remember the rattlesnake rather than the kitten. We want to hear about bad news. See, Paul has a choice. He had a choice. He's languishing away in his situation. And he could choose to focus his attention on the negative. And allowing the negative to influence his attitudes and his actions. He had a choice. Or he could choose to see things from God's perspective. But it takes an effort and it takes faith. It takes an effort and it takes faith. Anytime we have a problem and it starts getting us down, and it starts robbing us of our joy, it starts robbing us of our contentment, it affects us internally, and it also impacts our relationship with other people. Anytime that happens, we need to turn and look at Paul and follow his example. What did Paul do? Well, and we need to look and see things from God's point of view. We need to balance out. If you've got to listen to the news, read the Bible. And if it impacts you, read the Bible even more. And if it impacts you even more, read authors who talk about the Bible and allow God to get into us. Because that's what happens. When we watch nothing but the news, it gets into us, right? And it affects our mind. It affects our heart. But we allow God and the Holy Spirit to get into us more and more and more. And it impacts us, doesn't it? I believe that's something of the essence of what Ron was talking about last week. The battle for the mind, which becomes then the battle for the heart. But we need God's help in order to be able to accomplish it. See, Paul chose to spend his days in hope. Now think about this and how it would impact. So Paul makes the decision, I'm tired of this, I'm done with this, this isn't fair, this isn't right, I shouldn't be in this situation. Why did God put me in this situation? Now every time somebody comes in, what's he going to be sharing with people? This isn't fair, this isn't right, I'm in misery, this isn't good. And how are the jailers going to feel when they come? I mean, they're going to look at Paul and they're going to say, I don't blame them, this is kind of a rotten situation. But every time they're going to be leaving, they go, oh, I'm glad to get out of that house. I couldn't wait to get out of it today. He's just ranting and raving and whining. It's a good thing that none of us do that, right? But instead, he chooses to share the hope. He focuses on the hope. And what happens as a result of that? What happens is this. He becomes a positive influence to the people around him. Just picture this. One of these Praetorian guards had a rough week. They had a terrible time at the Colosseum. You know, they were having a hard time at home. Their dog bit them 3 times. Everything's going bad. The stock market crashed, and he's losing all of his savings. And he walks up to his supervisor and he goes, can I get a couple of shifts with Paul this week? What do you mean, you want a couple of shifts with Paul? Yeah, I want a couple of shifts with Paul. He kind of, picks me up. He makes me feel better. I like spending a bit of time with him. You want to be chained to Paul? Yes. And then the other guy comes up behind and goes, hey, by the way, could I get a few shifts too? Put me in on every day. I don't care. I'd be happy. I'll do a double shift too. Overtime if you want. I want to spend time with Paul. Why? Because Paul is sharing the good news. He's sharing about Jesus. He's sharing about hope. He's sharing about God's love. And I can imagine people are lining up saying, I want to spend time with this guy here. I spend time with him. He whines all day long. Oh, Paul, he's different. And what happens as a result of Paul? Paul's attitude. Does he do other things too? How many letters did Paul write when he was in Rome in prison? He wrote the letter to the Romans. He wrote 2 letters to the Corinthians. He wrote the letter to the Galatians, the Ephesians, the Philippians, the Colossians. He wrote 2 letters to Timothy. He wrote the 2 letters to Thessalonians, and so on. You see, he takes a negative situation and he focuses on God. And he allows God's strength to work through him. And he turns it around. And when he turns it around, he becomes a witness to the unbelievers. They look at him and they say, wow, he's got everything going against him. And boy, he cheers me up. Where does that come from? And to the believers, what does he say? He says in verse 14, and because of my imprisonment, many Christians here have gained what? What does it say up there? Confidence. They've gained confidence. And have become more bold in telling others about Christ. Now, I don't know if that's really proper English. It doesn't matter. But the emphasis is clear. Have become more bold in telling others about Christ. If Paul can do it, so can I. He's a witness for God. If we choose the negative, if we choose to allow the negative to influence us, it will steal away our joy, our hope, our love for God, and our love for others. And it will leave us in misery. Jesus said in chapter 24, verse 12 of Matthew, and it's just a part of what it says there, but it's still a very important part. He said, because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold. Now you hear that. Because of the increase of wickedness that we have around us, the love of most will grow cold. Now I put the word wax up there. The word comes from the original Greek, and you can read it in the King James, where it says your love will wax cold. And it's very significant that he uses this term, because it paints a picture, doesn't it? How you would make a candle back in the days. You would take a wick, and you would dip the wick in warm wax, and you would pull it up, and you would let the wax cool. And then you would dip it in again in the warm wax, and you would pull it up, and you would let it go cool. And you would keep doing this again and again and again. And it would build up with wax, right? Until it would cover the entire wick. And what he's saying is that it's very insidious. It happens very slowly, but it's deliberate. The more we allow this world to continue its influence on our heart and on our mind, our love will wax cold. It'll be covered over with this wickedness. But Jesus is willing at any time to come alongside us and to give us his power and to help us to continue to love him and others. If we take our eyes off Jesus, the impact of this world on our attitudes, on our actions, on our words, and our relationships with others will definitely suffer. How do we protect our hearts? How do we protect our hearts? I don't know if you remember the story back in 1 Samuel around chapter 29 and 30. The story is that David is in exile. He has been chased by King Saul, who wants to kill him. 13 years overall he spends in exile, away from his homeland. And David has a group of followers who are faithful to him, who are loyal to him, and who stick with him. But at the same time, they're exiled. They can't go back home. They can't go back to their extended families. They can't go back to their own land. And they're living among enemies. And then imagine it has an impact. And they go away. When they come back, their camp is burned. The tents are burned. And their families are gone. And their livestock are gone. And it's the last straw now for the men. They've had enough. They can't handle it anymore. We're away from our families. We're away from our land. We're in exile, and it's because of him. It's all his fault. And they're so angry and they're so bitter that they want to kill him. And David is upset too. He comes home and his family is not there. His sons and daughters are gone. His wives are gone. His livelihood is gone. He's discouraged too. What does he do? He's looking at his men, the last faithful men, and they want to kill him. What does he do? 1 Samuel chapter 30, verse 6. David was greatly distressed because the men were talking of stoning him. Each one was bitter in spirit because of his sons and daughters. But David found strength in the Lord his God. You know, you can be down and out, but God can give you strength if you seek it from him. But David found strength in the Lord his God, in faith. In faith in God. It doesn't matter how strong that faith is. We face our problems in God, in faith, with trust. And he gives us hope. Isaiah chapter 26 and verse 3, it says, "You, Lord, will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you, because he trusts in you." You get the point? We can't do it on our own. We can only do it with his help. There's an old chorus, "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee." We have to make that decision. We have to make that conscious decision to focus more on God, to focus more on the things of God than on the things and our problems that are around us. Last week we had a really nice time. We spent time with our family. And it was really nice to be able to do that. And we went to one home in particular, and I had to laugh after. There was a bit of bantering going on. Because this is what's happening. So you remember last Saturday, it was a beautiful day, wasn't it? It was sunny, it was warm, the snow is melting. This is the conversation. "So how are you doing?" "Oh, I've had a miserable month." "What do you mean you had a miserable month? It's a nice day out today." "Oh, but February is so cold." "Yeah, it was cold." "Well, you at home all day long in February? Did you go anyplace?" "Oh, I got together with friends an awful lot, but it was so cold." "Yeah, but it's a nice day today." "Oh, but February was just terrible. It felt like forever. It was never going to end. But the snow is melting. It's sunny. Do you want to go for a walk?" "No. February was such a cold month." You get the point? And I said to myself, I am not going there. Because if I go there, I'm going to be just like him. Eeyore. There you see it right there. He was Eeyore. Isn't this a nice day? No, the sun's going to fall soon. I might get a headache from all the sun that's going on. I don't know why I'm here. It's just awful. He was Eeyore. And I felt like Tigger. You know, and Tigger annoys me. But I was Tigger. No, it's a nice day. No, it's not. Yes, it is. Look outside. Oh, it was cold. I had a dear friend. She reminded me of Tigger. She was a beautiful Christian lady. And she was so enthusiastic. And I would watch people and I'd go, oh. But you'd leave her presence feeling good. You would. But it wasn't about her. You see, she was sharing the love of Jesus. And she was sharing it in the power of Jesus. You know, when we meet somebody who is focused on the problems, sometimes we just want to run in the other direction, don't we? We don't need that kind of a focus. Paul stated in verse 12 and 14, let me read it again. I want you to know, brother, that the things which happened to me have actually turned out for the furtherance of the gospel, so that it has become evident to the whole palace guard and to all the rest that my chains are in Christ. And most of the brethren in the Lord, became confident of my chains, are much more bold to speak the word without fear. That was Paul's influence. In chapter 4, verses 12 and 13, he says, I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I get back to my original point. It's a gift. Contentment is a gift. When we focus our attention on Jesus, he gives us this gift of contentment. Marcus Aurelius, Mike, do you know him? Okay, he lived around 8200. It's okay if you can't remember. He was a great promoter of Stoicism. You don't mind if I do this, do you, Mike? He's not saying anything.
I'll talk to you later. I'll talk to you later.
I'm in trouble now. Yeah, I'm picking on him. Isn't that terrible, too? He was a promoter of Stoicism. And he would say that, you know, people do dumb things. Well, I'm not going to argue with that, but it's the way he put things. He said, it's silly to try to escape other people's faults. They are inescapable. Just try to escape your own. It's kind of fatalistic, isn't it? He also stated, our life is what we make of it. Is that true? Our life is what we make of it. You see, Stoicism taught that we can learn contentment by force of will and by certain mental exercises. I'm going to tell you right now, I bombed at that. It didn't work for me. Because I believe what Jesus said when he talked about it in Matthew. The Spirit, God's Spirit, is willing, but the flesh is weak. I fail. T.R. Glover put it this way, though. He said, the Stoics make the heart a desert and call it peace. But Paul learned the gift of contentment. He said in verse 3, I can do all things through him who gives me strength. You see, God takes a heart which has become a desert and he makes it a spring of living water. That's the difference. We can succeed if we put our trust in